Warning, the following podcast does have an explicit tag, and we would hate to disappoint it.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, dying times here.
Welcome to Thunderdome, bitch.
You are listening to Not Another Atheist Podcast, the Ramble Without a Cause podcast that breaks down issues in the secular humanist community and tries to make sure that the explicit tag goes home satisfied. I'm the polite Canadian Keith, and joining me as always is the New York born and bound bundle of attitude, Jen. Jen, thank you as always for joining me and being full of attitude.
Like I'm not dragged here.
Because I'm Canadian and I'm polite as fuck.
Oh God, you're drunk on syrup again, aren't you?
Shut up, you hoser.
Why don't you introduce our fucking guest before we scare her off?
So we are joined tonight by a lady who Jen has said nothing but wonderful things about. So I am sorry that you now have quite the reputation to live up to.
I love her.
She speaks so highly of you, Mandisa. So we want to welcome you to the show.
Thank you so very much. It is so.
Why don't you say
here.
her name and her fucking organization? My God.
Because I don't know shit. Okay, look, I thought I was going to have like almost an extra hour just to at least do some preliminary stalking. And then I found out we got the time zones wrong.
I haven't taught you how to properly Facebook stalk yet, man. Whatever.
No, I just work a lot.
Wow. This is Mandisa Thomas from Black Nonbelievers, and we brought her on to talk about her organization and kind of her journey into coming out as not only as an atheist, but a Black atheist, which is a very small percentage of our community.
Yes, thank you very much, Jen and Keith.
Don't thank him.
Loving the back and forth here. This is so cool.
Don't thank him. He doesn't do shit.
Thank you.
It's hilarious. So well, for those of you who aren't familiar with me, my name is Mandisa Thomas. I am the founder and president of Black Nonbelievers, based in Atlanta, Georgia. And for those of you who didn't know, I am a New York native. Jen and I are from the same hood.
Yep.
We're both from Jamaica, Queens, New York.
Same hood.
And I've been in Atlanta now for over 20 years.
Yeah, you got out
down here when I was 20. Yeah, left when I was 21. My daughter was 3 weeks old, and never been back to New York to live. Yeah. But I do enjoy the Atlanta area, and I actually wasn't formally raised religious. I was fortunate enough to where I was raised in the Black conscious mindset. You know, for those of you who aren't familiar, it's like very yes,
like the whitest man on the planet,
white guy right here.
So for those of you who aren't familiar with that, it's what's called the woke community now. You know, people who are very, very up on socially conscious issues, racial justice issues. Was raised learning about Black history and culture, about systemic racism and injustice. Learned early on about how Christianity was imposed, to put it politely, during slavery. So
we were saved by God and brought to America and taken out of Africa.
Yeah. That's all. That never sat well with me at all. And
I don't blame you.
No. But the interesting thing about this mindset is that even though Blacks may reject the white version of Jesus and their God, there's still some idea that you have some sort of spirituality in you, in as far as being Black is concerned. And so there's this idea that somehow, we still walk with God even if we don't walk with Jesus. So it's a very interesting
I know exactly
thing that that we contend with in our community, and to of course identify as an atheist, openly identified atheist, is to reject being Black. It's
that I've heard.
There's this extra added stigma that comes along with being an atheist in our community, and that's changing, but I've always growing up, I've always kind of felt like an outsider. I've always been the Black kid. I mean, I am a product of the Black community. I grew up listening to hip hop. I mean, just I'm a hardcore
And I think
tribe
we kind of
fan.
had the upper hand because where we grew up, it wasn't very religious where we grew up because it was so mixed.
It was. I would say that we did have I had a very eclectic childhood and
And
upbringing.
I have a Catholic base, but I wasn't like in the church.
Yeah.
You have to.
My cousins were though.
Mm.
My cousins were and still are. My dad hated church.
Yeah.
And now I will say that my grandmother, my maternal grandmother, I remember going over to gatherings at her place, and she would never make us pray over any food. She celebrated holidays from a secular standpoint. Easter was about the Easter bunny and the candy.
Yeah.
It wasn't about the crucifixion of Jesus or anything like that. And so when I thought about my journey to being an open atheist, rather, I recall those times growing up and being around my cousins and other family members. And I remember some of my uncles on my mom's side were Muslim. They had converted to the Nation of Islam. I had another uncle who was Christian. He's a Jimmy Swaggart fanatic. And so I remember being exposed to different religions and different schools of thought, not enough to ever be interested in following it.
Pushed into it, yeah.
Yeah, and so I grew up when I was growing up, I was a classically trained singer. So I had a voice instructor, and I would sing in various churches. Y'all will get to experience that in the near future. So
we got to hear more about that later.
Yes, so I had the unique experience of being exposed to church, but not having to be of it. So I never was forced to believe in any of the doctrine. And I remember going to different churches growing up and thinking, wow, this stuff is weird. It's creepy almost. And so I actually feel for those who were forced to go to church growing up. And I could never, whenever I had to sing, I couldn't wait to get out of there because it always felt so restrictive. Whatever I would hear from the teachings of the doctrine, I was like, wow, this is so odd, especially the Trinity God of Christianity, the Father, the Son, the Holy Spirit. I'm like, wait, this doesn't make any sense. He's his own Father. He's his own Son. I mean, he's so powerful and omnipotent, but yet he
spying
couldn't save
on
himself.
You with a ghost and shit. Like, what the fuck?
Right.
Like, crazy, incestuous, perverted ass shit is this? No.
Right, but yet he couldn't save himself from the crucifixion. So I was like, wow, this is just so. I'm like, people actually believe in this stuff. Is so odd. And I remember trying to believe at one point, because my upbringing wasn't, very, I had a rough childhood, I really did. And so I tried. Yeah, no, it really
as a
was.
woman, especially to be. I mean, there were two ways you were getting out as a woman. You either flatbacks and got pregnant, or you got educated and got out.
Yeah, and I was both. There was a strong emphasis on education in my household, but I didn't escape. I wasn't able to escape abuse. I wasn't able to escape, the elements of my community, and so, having to process that at an early age. I tried to pray on it. I tried to believe that a God existed that was going to help, get me through, these problems. And no matter what, these prayers were never answered. And so I had to learn how to deal with that at an early age on my own. So, reality was a huge slap in the face to me growing up.
Mine, we grew up in a really eclectic area. But it by no means was this perfect kind of white picket fence. So we're, seeing our friends die at young ages.
Yeah.
Dumb shit. And I also grew up with a very strong Arabic community in my neighborhood, my side of the neighborhood.
Oh shit.
And I was watching my 16-year-old friends be married off to these 30-year-old men, 40-year-old men, because their God said this is appropriate.
Yeah.
I mean, being pulled out of high school and 14, getting pulled out of high school and being married off to men that were violently abusive and raped children. I mean, let's call it what it is.
Yeah.
I'm like, and I remember that was a big focal point that I was like, How the fuck is God so great if he's literally sanctioning raping children?
To be fair, he's great if you're a man.
Yes.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And then I remember I raised Catholic, but we never like really got into it. But they made me do all the sacraments.
Ugh.
And I remember confirmation. I really only went to confirmation because there was this really hot guy in my confirmation class. So that was kind of why.
Shocking.
The cutest, dumbest thing I had ever seen. He was dumb as a box of fucking rocks, but goddamn, he was good to look at. He's actually a model now, which isn't surprising. But I remember standing in, like you said, for men in these fucking classes and shit, and they're talking about men are great this, and like they were programming us.
And this is how you support your man and how you help him be the best he can be.
To be these subservient little wives. And I remember sitting next to my sister, and I actually said in the class, in the CCD class, I was like, yo, this is bullshit. And she goes, excuse me? I was like, are you actually teaching us why we're being confirmed? Or are you like teaching me how to suck a dick while cooking dinner? I was 14. I don't know how I didn't get thrown out of that class. I don't know how. So I was like, were you teaching me to suck a dick while I fucking cook dinner? And I looked at her, I was like, I'm Italian. We're already raised to learn how to do this shit from jump. I'm fucking good. I'm good. Well, you still have to learn to be a proper Catholic lady.
Fuck you, I don't.
So that means get drunk, pop out a bunch of kids, cheat on my husband, and then cry to my girlfriends about it? Is that what that means?
Wait.
Oh, but show up in church, eat a little piece of bread, and drink a fucking sip of wine that I'm probably drunk from the night before, and it's all good. Okay. I see how that goes now. Okay.
But every once in a while you have to confess your sins and promise not to do it again, but really you're planning out the next adventure and coke binge anyways.
I was usually high as a fucking kite when I was doing my confessions, but anyway.
I don't know. If it weren't for the fact that the wife would murder me, I'd probably go to church high.
You know, ironically, I was actually one of the more I was the more goody two shoes out of my family.
I could see that.
To be,
I think that's why we get along so well, because I have that real rebellious nature, and you're still kind of the no.
Well, I was actually rebellious in my own way. You know, there were a lot of things I did that I learned how to be sneaky about. But I actually
so you were rebellious, you just weren't outgoing about it.
Right. Yeah. I was very, very good at hiding it. You know, I was I was the one that no one ever expected to do anything wrong, and a lot of things I really didn't do wrong, but you know, I got caught up. I started having sex early. You know, I became very aware of sex and sexuality early. And it didn't help that both sides of my family were pretty freaky. But the thing is, you know, I've noticed that with the Christian side of the family, you couldn't talk about it.
No.
You know, they did things. You know, a lot of my Christian cousins were getting pregnant as teenagers. Mm-hmm. Of course, even though the expectation was that they weren't going to have sex, but they were out doing it. They were out hanging out. But then when they got pregnant,
on top of that, because they're not talking about it. So they're getting
right.
And they don't know what to do at this point.
Right. And so they were, but then once they had the babies, they were accepted. And, you know, it was just a continuous vicious cycle. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And so it was just I thought it was very ironic that when I moved from New York to Atlanta, my now husband and I weren't married at the time, but we had our daughter. Right. And my paternal grandmother was like, well, you know, marriage is honorable and stuff. But I'm like, yeah, so is taking care of your kids, which your son, my father, did not do.
Right. And so is waiting until you're both saying, okay, you know what? I wouldn't mind being legally tied to you for the rest of my life, instead of rushing into it, not knowing each other, resenting it, and then having to spend, Jen, 10 grand on a fucking divorce and raising your child in this toxic fucking environment.
Right. And so it was just always very interesting, you know, what they chose to, like you said, cherry pick and show as being important. And so I had to learn how to, the one thing I could say about my mother with everything is that me and my brothers and I were raised in an environment where we had to think, where we had to read. I grew up reading a lot. And so I didn't always read what my mother wanted me to read, but I developed enough to where I knew how to think about certain things at an early age. I had to grow up very early and see the world around me, which actually prepared me for my adulthood, I don't regret it.
Right.
So, I guess I kind of learned early on that there is no God.
And like people
There's
ask
no-
me, when did you convert to being an atheist? And I'm like, I kind of think I always was. Because I always
Right.
looked at it like it's bullshit. And I don't and I was raised the same way. You read, you question. If it doesn't make sense, ask a question. And everything was very education and science based. And I'm like, this shit don't make sense. This shit does not make sense.
Yeah, I grew up and I was very militant. I knew who Malcolm X was before Martin Luther King.
Yeah.
And so I was very, very militant and combative. And I was like, we are being brainwashed as a people. The fucking white man has done this, that. I mean, I was so out there
Militant.
as a
And
teenager.
my mom had a very rough upbringing, and she didn't grow up as, the typical white girl.
Mhm.
So she kind of, and she had me young. She was 19. So she kind of pushed off that rougher upbringing on me. And I remember being one of the only fucking white girls in the hood.
Yeah.
And I'm looking at white people like, fuck these white people. Fuck this white bitch. And they're like, yo, what the fuck? And I'm like, no, y'all don't fucking know. I don't know personally, but I'm watching shit. Fuck that white bitch. And they're like, what the fuck? And I'm like, you don't understand. It's okay. You don't see this shit that you're doing. And now and especially living in the South, like I legitimately look at white people and I say fucking white people all the goddamn time. I'm like, fucking white people.
I live in Canada and I say that constantly.
I'm like, fucking white people. Anything worse could be you're from fucking Florida. Fuck fucking white people. Are you fucking kidding me right now? But it was interesting to grow up where we grew up because it was so eclectic that you actually you gave a shit about various different types of people. So when social shit came down and you saw people you loved going through it, that was some hard fucking shit because that opens your eyes real quick. Yeah, and I get into it a lot with people down here, and stop and frisk, and there's no racial profiling, and Black men are not at a higher risk for getting, comply, don't die.
Right.
That. And I'm like, no, that's fucking bullshit.
Yeah.
I lost a friend to police fucking gunshots. I lost Sean Bell. I grew up with Sean Bell. I remember that case. Well, he ran his mouth. They shot 2 people up on the LIRR platform. That's how fucking wild these bullets were. Yeah. And then a woman that I had worked with online, Sandra Bland. We had run quite a few groups together, and she mysteriously dies in prison. She dies in jail. Yeah. And I'm like, y'all don't fucking understand this shit. Yeah. It is not comply, don't die. Because they're fucking killing people anyway. It doesn't even matter who they're targeting. They're shooting people waiting for a fucking train. They shot a father with no weapons on him and got off. So don't fucking tell me about the fucking thin blue line and fucking Blue Lives Matter. Don't. Because I've watched my own friends get their asses beat for no fucking reason other than the fact they were Black and hanging out with a white female. Don't. Well, we just can't see it because we didn't experience it like you. And then shut the fuck up. Right. Why are you talking about it?
that to me is just one of the most infuriating things. And I freely admit I was one of those assholes growing up.
You were.
I
dick.
Absolutely.
You fucking dick. You fucking white people. Fucking white men.
Fuck you want me to do, okay? I'm sorry. No, it's when you grow up and you get to live under that ignorance, it's so comfortable that pulling yourself out of it is fucking impossible.
It's scary.
Yeah, but
really
unfortunately for the Black community in particular, that there is such an emotional tie to the church.
Yes.
And this codependence on the church and belief in God to get us out of all of this. Now, you said, and you talked about police brutality, you talked about the discrimination, you talked about the profiling, we talked about, you discussed all of that, but many in the Black community still think that God is going to save us.
Yeah. And that's
we're like,
scary shit.
No, it is.
And it's like, but you were brought over by white men to worship a white God. And it is white fucking police officers that are killing Black men. Like,
and
it's something that blows my mind, and I'll never understand it being white. I'll never understand it. I will never. I can never claim to sit there and understand the community vibe that comes from it. From
part of it is historical. Part of it is
Right.
because the church has always, of course, during slavery, that was the only time, one of the only times that slaves were allowed to, achieve some sort of prominence, and
Right.
also after slavery and during the civil rights movement. And yeah, there were many historically Black colleges and universities that were started in churches.
Right.
They did have their place in the community where they helped. Of course, that didn't change the doctrine, though. It didn't
No.
change the doctrine of suffering. It didn't change the doctrine of obedience and submission, and basically no self-esteem, not even low self-esteem,
Right.
no self-esteem.
Because you have to give
And
everything to
so-
God. So nothing is in your control, and you have no kind of self-esteem or no kind of confidence in
Right.
yourself.
Which basically reinforced this sense of disparity still in our communities. And which is really that's often the elephant in the room conversation. Now they're starting to, people that are questioning, they're starting to, question the validity of the church, how effective it is. You're talking about $1 billion institution, $1 billion institution, billions of dollars.
Just $1 billion.
Yes. Yeah, billions
alone
of
in
dollars.
tax breaks. Fuck their profit alone in tax breaks.
Yeah, but yet,
and
you still have, and it's feeding off of the people.
Yes,
and
it amazes me that I hate to equate poor and lower class with Black, but I mean, in the United States, let's get real about it. Those that are the poorer class are majority. The majority is Black. You have these in the Black neighborhood. Well, I wouldn't say for the majority, but when you think of poor minorities, you think of Black people in the United States. You don't think of white people living in poverty. You don't think of East Tennessee. You don't think of East Kentucky. You don't think about that shit. And you have these churches that are the center of lower income Black communities because there's really nothing else being pumped into this neighborhood. And they're talking about, we got to rise out of poverty. We got to do this. But they're making people give them 10% of their paychecks.
So they're the perpetuators.
So how do you expect anybody to pull themselves out of poverty when you're making somebody else rich?
Yep.
On the backs of your children.
Isn't that the American dream, though?
Pretty much. That's capitalism in a fucking nutshell right there.
It is. It is.
Actually, what I found that was really interesting, just kind of to piggyback off of what you were saying, Jen, is when you do tend to think of the poorer neighborhoods, one of the first things that does come to mind does tend to be the Black community and people of color. And I watched a really interesting, have you ever watched Adam Ruins Everything?
No.
I've heard of it. I think I've watched part of an episode.
It's a really interesting little series. You can pull it up on YouTube. They have a lot of little clips. It's an actual full-blown show where he breaks down a lot of, he kind of shatters a lot of illusions. And he talks a lot or one episode anyways, he talks about why in the poorer communities, they do tend to be higher. You do see a larger Black population, is because that's a carryover from what happened in the 1940s, 50s, and 60s, where the Black neighborhoods were, they were so underfunded. There was no money being pumped into those schools. And so it's just this cycle that's been perpetuated until now.
Yeah, there's generational wealth.
Yes.
Generational poverty.
Yes.
Exactly.
I want to talk about.
And one of the greatest indicators of where your socioeconomic status is going to be is to look at your parents.
Yep. Absolutely. Unless you either completely score shit or completely fuck shit up.
Fucking outlying data.
You have a higher chance of winding up like your parents. And if you have this generational poverty, it's much harder for the next generation to get out of it.
Exactly.
Especially with higher cost of living, inflation, dollars not meeting the fucking cost of living adjustment.
Well, when you only make minimum wage and you cannot feed a family off of that,
it's
how the fuck are you going to be able to,
and it's a cycle because you drop out of school younger to support yourself, to help your family. You're not as educated.
So you can't get better jobs.
On and on.
Exactly.
But then you have the church, which is, come to us, we'll save your soul, we'll make everything better. Give us 10% of your paycheck.
Right.
And you didn't see a lot of that up north because it was more Catholic than it was Christian. But I got down here and I'm like, the fuck y'all mean you're giving 10% of your fucking salaries to your fucking church, or they're gonna kick you out. Why do you give a shit so much?
It's the group membership. It's the in-group, out-group thing, and that's a social psychological discussion that I think we could probably spend 3 or 4 episodes on.
Fucking blows my mind.
Oh yeah.
Like I can't imagine the culture shock for you as a Black woman.
Oh my
come
gosh.
from New York to the South, and the Black community is so centered around church down here.
First of all, I mean, that was one of the first questions you know, the fact that it's assumed for most of us, but it was, you know, of course it was other Black folks who were like, well, what church do you go to?
Yes.
And I'm like, oh my gosh. I was
Oh.
like, okay.
The Church
I
of
mean,
the Wine bottle in my fridge right now. I'm like, what? I drink wine and eat bread on the weekends. I mean, it counts, right? It totally fucking counts, right? I eat sandwiches and drink wine on the weekends, so this
I take
counts.
the sacrament every day.
I get totally drunk and call my friends and confess all my sins, and then drink a whole bunch of wine and eat a bunch of sandwiches. So this shit counts, right?
And then I say, "Oh God, what have I done?" A lot. So I mean, there's prayer, there's it's great.
Exactly.
20% of my
Depending
income
on my
goes into
mood,
my
oh God,
wine.
exactly. Depending on my mood, oh God's either coming out in tears or pure joy. So it's pretty. Like, why do I have to put pants on to do this? I don't understand.
Yeah.
But
So
I got that too. You know, what church do you belong to? And I was like,
Our Lady of Perpetual Donation.
Our Lady
Yeah.
of I'm perpetually fucked up. How about that? But it's so much higher in the Black community down here.
It is. And, you know, my family and I, luckily, you know, my husband is atheist as well.
Right.
You know, he's a non-believer. He isn't as active as I am, but he's pretty much, he is. And so, I mean, and we're introverts. I still carried some of that over,
Yeah.
you know, from my childhood, is that I know how to, you know, operate in solitude when I have to, even though I'm very outgoing.
Yes.
But it became very frustrating we decided, we were like, look, we don't want our, you know, our social network to be based around people who go to church. We just don't. And so after examining, you know, I watched Bill Maher's Religulous. I also had the opportunity to meet Jeremiah Kamara, who has become very much a colleague and a good friend in this community. You know, he produced the documentary Contradiction. And so after meeting other Black atheists online and becoming more familiar with the secular community, I decided that, you know, I re-identified as atheist. The first time I was asked when I was atheist was when I was 14. And this goes back to my militant stage, and I went to I went to LaGuardia High School music.
I'm so jealous of you. I'm so jealous of you. You remember the tap test that you had to take when you auditioned and you had to tap the pen?
Yes.
I fucked up 2 taps and didn't get accepted for the music program. I went to Bayside for it instead. I'm so fucking jealous of you.
Yeah, I was a vocal major.
You bitch. God damn it.
So that was another part. I mean, and that was a part of those were part of my years that I really do appreciate, because some of my very good friends to this day are still from high school.
Same.
And so it was great, you know, traveling to the city, you know, taking the E train and, you know, and it really was cool. And, I remember the first time I was asked if I was atheist was when I was in my freshman year of high school. And I was like, well, what does that mean?
Yeah, what is that word?
And I was told, well, it means you don't believe in heaven or hell. And I thought about it. And I said, yeah, that sounds about right. Because I remember laying awake at night as a kid and thinking, well, what happens when we die? And actually being scared of it, because it was a place that no one had ever come back from. And so it was like,
and it was to me, the choice was in somebody else's hands, that my soul and if I'm going to suffer for eternity isn't even fucking up to me. It's how somebody perceives my actions.
And
we've all been in relationships, and we all know how people perceive other people's actions is not how you intend them a lot of the time.
Yeah. And so I also remember thinking, well, I tried to reconcile that. Well, there's a heaven that I could go to, when
See
I
everybody I love that
die,
passed, and
right? But there was just still no evidence, and I was like, wow, yeah, no. I never could reconcile this
Mhm.
idea of going to a place that had no evidence of existence, no proof.
I always thought it was kind of selfish too, because it's like, so you're doing good things just to go to a good place.
Right.
So, and then it's like, your whole point is to die to go to a better place. I'm like, isn't it nicer to be put back in the ground and kind of, grow the food that your grandchildren are eating and provide nutrients and like continue to provide for your family and your bloodline and your generations? Wouldn't this be like a nicer thing to think about than
Right.
let me
But
just smile at
also,
people and I can go to a happy place? The
also too,
fuck?
some of the meanest, most selfish people I knew growing up were Christians.
Yes.
They
Yes.
were very, they didn't really give a shit about
No.
what happened to anyone.
Except
They
themselves.
were, except themselves. And I'm sitting up here looking at them like, oh my gosh. Like, some of them were just the worst human
Oh,
beings
you live
ever.
in the South. You know that Southern ass peach bullshit. They all go
Yeah.
to church and they all smile in each other's faces. And the
Mhm.
minute one bitch leaves that fucking house, they talking about her.
Yeah.
And I'm
In New
telling you right
York,
now,
they aren't much better. Yeah.
exactly. But
Yes,
sitting
but
in
in the
that house,
South, yes.
the bitch sitting three down from her is probably fucking that girl's man too.
Right.
Shit,
Right. Yeah.
New York, at least we were a little more
Yeah.
open about it. We were more open about it.
Yeah. But in the city, they're very, very, very covert, a little bit more underhanded with it. So yes, you're absolutely
Oh
right
my God.
about that.
It's on top of being in the South. This is also a military community.
Mm.
You want to talk about some underhanded ass kissing bitches up in this motherfucker?
Oh,
And I'm
I'm
like,
sure.
yo, I saw you at the bar with your boyfriend when your husband deployed. Stop. Stop it.
Right.
Now you gonna sit here and pray? Do you just turn from the dick to the prayer when you on your knees now because you so Christian? Like, what are you doing?
Well, that's a convenient thing about being on your knees is that you can go from
Exactly. She
sucking
can turn
dick
around
to
and do
taking
that,
it up
and
the
then
ass.
right, she can turn around, suck her boyfriend's dick, and then just literally turn her back and pray for forgiveness that she's cheating on her fucking husband. Like, I'm like, how does this shit absolve? What the fuck is? Oh my God.
And the
That's why
thing
I
that
have.
gets me is that this is normal human behavior. I mean, it is, people fuck, we have sex. I mean, sometimes but of
It's
course, if you're a woman
amazing.
doing it, you're the worst thing in the world.
Oh, how dare you
It's
not protect your modesty?
How dare
right.
you taint your sacred vessel of a uterus?
Right. It's more, it seems to be more prudent to talk about what's going on behind each other's backs and to actually
Right.
have honest conversations
And
about sex and
I've noticed
sexuality.
when you do repress things like that, it's not just teenagers getting knocked up. It's women that have miscarriages that
Yeah.
aren't being made aware of what's going on with their bodies. Or
Mm-hmm.
women that have conditions like I had adenomyosis or endometriosis or PCOS or one of the many reproductive issues that make it harder for women who do suffer from them. They're not talking about their sexuality. They're not talking about their reproductive systems, and they're in pain and their bodies are being damaged.
Mm-hmm.
And nobody's educating women on this because of this
Yep.
hush hush modesty bullshit. They're afraid
Yep.
to go to their doctors for it because their doctors are fucking Christian. And their doctors are like, why the fuck are you thinking about your vagina like this? Like, because it fucking hurts. That's why. The fucking vagina hurts. That's why. But no, we're supposed to own vaginas and like, shut up and suffer in silence.
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, I said suffering in silence is something that I don't do well.
Yeah,
I just don't. Even if I'm not screaming at the top of my lungs, I will try to find another way to deal with it that I know I can help myself. Suffering in silence is something that I just never.
Like I have found out many times over the course of my life who is down for me because when I'm going through shit, I can't stay quiet about it. I need to talk and get it out.
Mm-hmm.
And it comes very quickly to me on who's fucking real and who I can't be fucking with. I'm the same way. But the Christian Catholic doctrine is for women, you suffer in fucking silence. You shut the fuck up because what are you doing talking? You got a dick in you, you're pushing a kid out and you're cooking fucking dinner. You don't have fucking time to talk. You don't have time to complain about your fucking husband. And according to the Bible, women are not supposed to preach. Women are not supposed to do any of that shit. It's the man that's supposed to be the
Women
head of
shall
the
not have authority over a man.
Right. So you need to shut the fuck up and sit down because it's your man's job to fucking say something. No, I don't. That shit don't rock with me. Mm-mm.
So we've definitely spent a lot more time on that topic than expected.
What made you decide to start Black Nonbelievers? Is my next question.
There we go.
Sorry.
Well, first it was when I came out as atheist, for one, or re-identified as an atheist, and I was trying to look for others within. I received a notification about a Black atheist meetup in the Atlanta area, so I was like, "Wow, okay, I would like to, participate in that. I would like to see what that's all about." Because the thing for me was to actually get out and meet other people. I'm a firm proponent of taking online relationships offline and getting to meet people in person.
Yes.
Because that the online arena can only do so much good for so long. There are so many people who use a computer as their internet security blanket, which isn't really healthy. And so
and people think about what they're saying and how they're presenting themselves online. So you really don't. It's hard to really get to know who the person really
right.
is.
Yes. Us. We like, look, say this shit to my face.
Yeah, we like
what?
We
like to
Fuck
see
that.
people's face.
I remember when I think we met briefly at some convention, and then we added each other online and we kind of bullshitted online, but we kept it very light.
Yeah.
And then we saw each other and we're like, where's the fucking coffee?
Right. Like, hey,
I got you
girl,
coffee. And we're sitting there just bullshitting, and it was much more personal face to face.
Yes.
So we're now people
really
get really personal face to face, and then they, really personal online, and then they get face to face and they're staring at their phones.
Yeah.
And I'm like, wait, this is backwards. Like,
yeah.
No wonder y'all are so fucking single and lonely. What the fuck? No wonder.
Yeah.
What the fuck is wrong
And
with
then you have so many people who have, our community is so socially awkward. Really bad.
Really is.
You have so many people who are so expressive online. They're able to articulate themselves so well online.
And then
but then when you see them in person, you're like, wait, what? So and that's one of the reasons why Black Nonbelievers, we started off as Black Nonbelievers of Atlanta, because when I went to my first meetup, first of all, I was only one of 2 Black people there. And I had been forewarned about atheist meetups and how they're predominantly white. Yeah. How most of the white folks there, even though they mean well, either they will try to smother you because you're like one of the few or only Black people there, or they're talking to you as if they can never connect with you, or they're very dismissive. And so I thought, well, I'll still give it a try. I'll see how this turns. I'll see how this how it goes.
Yeah.
And sure enough, that's pretty much exactly what happened. I did have some good conversations with folks, but really, it was, I got the whole, I've never met a Black atheist before. And I was like, wow, okay, yeah, that's strike number 1.
Yeah, okay. Wow.
And so,
wow, okay.
Yeah. And then the way the conversation went, it was like, well, how is your struggle any worse than ours? We go through this too, where we're like, here we go.
Fucking white people.
Yeah. Yeah. White people doing what white people do.
Exactly. White people doing what the fuck white people do.
And so
I need to teach classes because they won't listen to a Black person. I need to teach the fucking class because they won't listen to a Black person. But they'll listen to the fucking short white chick.
Which is so sad too.
I know, that's horrible. Like I am fucking white, blonde-headed, granted it's bottled, but whatever. Blonde-headed and fucking green-eyed. I should not be the one that you listen to about the Black fucking experience. What's wrong with you?
No, but to be fair, at least they're more likely to listen to you.
And that's the problem. That's the problem.
Right. It is the problem.
That is the problem. That's very much the problem.
And what's even more infuriating is when they get dismissive of you because, oh, you're just brainwashed. Oh, you're just suffering from all that white guilt. Blah blah blah.
We have a local atheist community here, and we have a few Black members, and I've seen it within. Just because you're an atheist doesn't mean you're a better person.
No, not at all.
Fucking atheists. And we've gotten into political discussions about more Black issues in America,
Mhm.
And they're, why can't Black people just pull themselves out? And I'm like,
Motherfucker, sit down.
and then I'll say something and they'll be like, no, you're just Black and angry to other people. And then I'll say something and it's like, oh, I never looked at it that way. And I'm like, I'm literally saying the same fucking shit that they are.
Right.
Like, I'm just repeating what an actual Black person has said. And now, oh, well, that makes sense to me.
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
Like, I can't.
So yeah, in realizing that the other Black guy that was there, we started talking, and I said, we're in Atlanta. It's a predominantly Black city. I said, there has to be more of us out here.
Yeah,
There's no way that people are sitting up in these churches just believing all of this shit. There can't be.
Right.
So we decided that, on what I was saying, that, okay, we need to start this group for Black non-believers.
Right.
And the reason why we chose non-believers as opposed to atheists, because it was already a Black Atheists of America organization that was out there.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it was purely meant to be local. Black Non-Believers of Atlanta.
Right.
We were going to start basically this fellowship that was local to the Atlanta area, where we met up and and built support for
And had like a
those
safe
Black
space
atheists.
for it. Yeah.
Right. And
Right.
to show that there are more of us out here
Right.
than the
That you're not
community is
alone.
trying
Yeah.
to.
Yeah.
Right. And so we started that in 2011, and it caught on so much that there was interest in starting groups in other cities. And the other guy who co-founded this with me, he's since moved on, but we increased our scope to just Black non-believers. And from there, we started other affiliate groups. So we've been invited on certain on different podcasts. And I remember the first one we did, where we talked about the organization, and I was completely surprised to hear people say, well, why does there have to be a Black non-believers? Why can't there be a white non-believers? This
Oh
is
my
racist. And I'm thinking to myself, well, we weren't doing it.
Fucking white.
I mean, I'm like, if you look at the majority of the meetups, they're white already. You don't need a white
but like
non-believers group.
I have
And
such
it
a
was
fucking hard time with this. Anything that Black people come together and do is not an automatic attack on white people.
Right. Yes.
Black people can have a community without white people in it. It's okay. Like,
right.
I would never in my life look at you and be like, I want to be a part of Black non-believers. You would look at me like, is your fucking white crusty ass? What the fuck are you thinking?
Actually,
no.
You know what? See, I don't even the way I've grown, the way I am.
Right.
I'm like, you certainly can be a part of Black
but I
non-believers,
wouldn't want to. I understand that
right.
it's a community specifically for Black atheists, because yes, the atheist population is small, but the Black atheist population is a fraction of that. And I am not going to be that fucking white person that comes in like, oh, it's all about equality, so fuck this shit. No, I'm not going to be that one. You know what I mean?
And let's face it here. There is a strong identity, as you were saying, Mandisa, with going to church, being Christian, and being Black. When you're white, nobody gives a shit what the flying fuck you are. You could be Wiccan.
I mean,
you can
I
attempt to
may
be
get
Buddhist.
some shade. I might get some shade for not being in the church down here. But nobody really gives a fuck if I was up against Mandisa and she's like, well, I don't go to church. She's going to face way more ostracization from her community than mine.
And also, too, is being seen like wanting to be like those white people.
Yes.
People don't get that. They don't get that. Okay, well, again, it's like you're rejecting all the injustice that we went through, all the suffering, to be like those white people who oppressed us. Which atheism has nothing to do with that. It simply means that you don't believe. I mean, surely we have to take a look at the Christian doctrine and how we were oppressed in the first place.
Right.
It was by those white people, but for the most part, I mean, anyone who has this sort of religious identity can be enslaved and oppressed by anyone. So
because you're already enslaved and oppressed by some higher being that you're living your life for.
Exactly.
It doesn't matter what fucking religion you're a part of. It doesn't matter what name you want to put on it. It's the same fucking basic bullshit.
Absolutely.
You're still living your life for another entity outside of yourself that is controlling you. Now,
Yeah.
we're parents. Yes, we do live our lives for our children, but our kids damn sure ain't fucking controlling us.
Right. And
Not up in this,
I
not
would
up in this
even
motherfucker.
I would even say that, there has to be a part of myself that doesn't live my life completely for my children.
Exactly.
You
No,
have to
yeah.
live your life for
There's
yourself,
everything
Yeah.
in my life is for my son, but there is still a part of me that's Jen and is not
Right.
mom.
Right. And children also have to be their own individuals and grow
Yes.
their own identity.
Yes.
And that has been the part of my atheism that I love so much, is that it has enabled me to redefine those societal norms, that
Yes.
we absolutely have to live as mothers. We absolutely have to do everything for our
Yeah.
children.
And
We
our
don't.
lives end at our
Yeah.
children. And when our children are
Right.
grown, then our lives end at our men.
Right. And it doesn't,
And
we
it does.
have absolutely the right to live and express
Right.
ourselves on our
And
own accord.
when you're not raising your children under this umbrella of God and you have to act like this, and this is what you're expected to as a man, and you notice that your children tend to explore their own norms instead of
Yeah.
being told what norm they
Mm-hmm.
have to follow. And
Yeah.
I love watching my son do that.
Yeah.
I love him because I'm that, oh, that's personality shit. You let that shit fly. I'm gonna let you
Yeah.
handle that shit all on your own. And then
Mm-hmm.
watching him discover it.
Yeah.
And he's not bound to, I have to be this breadwinning, tough, stoic man,
Right.
or I'm going to be ostracized for it. I'm not going to be seen that I can
Right.
provide and be a good spiritual leader. And he's finding his own sensitivities and he's finding his own ways of dealing with them. And it's amazing to watch. And then I think
Yes.
about, I grew up Italian, Roman Catholic Italian.
Mm.
And I remember watching, and Irish Catholic on the other side. So I remember watching my cousins being raised under this shit. They are some of the most fucked up partners and fathers I've ever fucking seen in my life.
Mm.
They're so walled off and so stoic and so outright abusive because they've been told that they can get away with it. And they keep perpetuating this shit to where their daughters are winding up with men like this and
Yeah.
their sons are turning into men like this.
Yeah.
All under the umbrella of the protection of God.
Mm-hmm.
Praise Jesus.
Praise baby Jesus.
Yeah.
Praise
So
baby
we've
fucking
been
Jesus.
so we've been around for, like I said, 7 years, and we've been finding other, we've been finding, and other Black atheists have been finding us.
Yeah.
And we've been fortunate to be able to have a medium to where we've been able to also have our members' voices featured, like in the public spectrum. Like, we've had people contact us to film for documentaries and for people to have, so people to see us, because visibility has been important. Because if people don't know you're there, if they don't see you.
Yeah,
And
and
so,
they feel like they have nobody to come to at that point.
right. And so we've been very, very good at, and just how I am, I've been very good at, being able to make those connections, and also attending other atheist and secular events, because it is important. It has been important to show our faces in those places, so that people can. Mhm.
I will say I've because you've seen me sit back and watch at the conventions. I like to watch people. And
Yeah.
I will see Black men and Black women that you could tell are still not solidified in their atheism.
Mm-hmm.
And they're kind of timid and they're sitting in the back of the room. And I tend to watch those people because I want to see if they're in a conversion spot, or maybe they're just religious and curious. And if they are, and if they, maybe y'all walk up and I'll talk to them. And maybe me talking to them, me explaining some things to them makes them feel more comfortable. And I've seen people like this watch you guys and watch you and your organization speak and then come to you.
Mm-hmm.
And then they walk out with this, like their shoulders are back a little more and their heads are a little higher. They're not as ashamed and they're not as timid.
Yeah.
And I'm like, that is the fucking reason this shit exists right there.
Yeah.
That's it. That's it. That's how you
There's
know.
Yeah, there's power in that, and power not as in to rule over anyone.
Mm-hmm.
There's power in helping people find themselves and find their voices,
Right.
and being able to live what people call their truth, and not have to apologize for it.
And that's the biggest thing. They don't have to be
Yes.
sorry about it, about
Right.
not being who they are. Because I mean, let's look at it. Especially with Christianity, if you're not God's perfect image, you're fucking wrong.
Right. And remember, the perfect image of God, especially in this country, is white.
Is white.
So
Right.
for that, Blacks have always had
Exactly. And
that
so you
stacked
morph
against
yourself
us.
into this because of what you're being told. And that is called gaslighting.
Yeah.
When
But guess
you
what?
are
Black Jesus hasn't helped either. Black Jesus can't save us either.
But
And that's
yeah,
what the that's
What
what
but
about
it's the
Korean
same.
Jesus?
It's the same
Nope,
doctrine.
can't
No,
either.
Korean Jesus ain't helping either.
Yeah.
They've no.
Yeah.
But
Mhm.
Well,
it's
I
the
guess he's
same
busy dealing
doctrine.
with Korean shit.
It's the same doctrine, and it's gaslighting. Religion is fucking gaslighting.
Yeah.
You're being told that you're wrong, and you're being convinced that it's you.
Mm-hmm.
So you're dancing around, and there's nothing wrong with being you.
Exactly. You're absolutely right about that.
It's abusive. I'm sorry, religion is abusive shit. Like, I'll be the first fucking person to come out and say that shit.
It's
God,
abusive. It's
if you have a
manipulative. It's all of
relationship with
that.
God, you are in an abusive relationship.
Yeah.
Period. This
Mhm.
motherfucker don't come around. He ain't paying your motherfucking bills. You giving him money. You
Yeah.
wasting your gas. He's a fucking meme. It's a literal fucking relationship meme. Let's think about this. You ask and ask and ask, and he ain't giving you shit, but you giving this motherfucker everything.
Yeah.
Now, say you took homeboy off the fucking street. He's sleeping on your couch, driving your car, eating your kids' motherfucking cheese sticks, taking money from you. How long you gonna keep him around? Come summertime, his ass out the door.
Right. Right. You're absolutely right.
And you're right. It's the perfect Christian doctrine is white.
Yeah.
And it's something that Black people you cannot be I can never be a Black woman. You can never be a white woman. It's biologically not fucking possible.
Right.
So you're constantly at odds with what you were biologically born as.
It's also very interesting that it's always a lot of white folks who are like, well, we're all one human race. There should be no division. But y'all are the ones who created this division in the first place, collectively. Not individually, but collectively. It has been the white,
and I'm not going to sit here and sing some kumbaya ass shit knowing it's still going on. No.
Yeah.
No, this shit has to be. Why does everything got to be so violent? Can't you just all understand that we're
because you don't pay attention if they're
just one
just standing there with a sign.
That fucking Kendall Jenner Pepsi bullshit is what I like to call it. Kendall Jenner Pepsi
that
bullshit.
Was hilarious.
That's what I like. That's what I like to call it.
Hilarious.
And it's like, no, you radically, and granted, not you specifically, your ancestors radically came into people's homelands and killed them to create this division.
Yeah, I mean, we can, I go into the historical aspect whenever I speak. I mean, we could spend a lot more time on this.
The literal racial divide in the United States was white people going to Africa, physically kidnapping human beings, taking them across oceans in inhumane conditions, and then auctioning them off as fucking cattle.
Mm-hmm.
Their own children.
After the indigenous populations were decimated here. Yeah.
I actually, my house actually sits on the Trail of Tears. Like, they've walked and died over where my house stands.
Wow.
I'm like, so we killed everybody off, and then we just started kidnapping people. Fuck it. We were kidnapping our own fucking citizens when Blacks were free in the North, and they were kidnapping Black people to bring them down South for fucking bounties. You had slave masters raping slaves and auctioning off their own fucking children because they were half Black.
Yep.
So
and that, all of that, all of that comes along with a psychological effect that has been generationally damaging.
Perpetuated.
Yes, it has been perpetuated. It has been damaging. And that is a part of the psychosis that people don't understand when it comes to this emotional tie to God and belief, particularly in the Black community. Yeah.
I grew up in a Black community, and my mother grew up in a Black community where my father did not. And even though I was aware of what was going on in the Black community, there were these micro actions that I was doing that I was completely unaware of that were perpetuating this racial divide brought on by white people. And I remember sitting down one night and really thinking about it, and it was right after Sean had died, and realizing it. And I'm like, holy shit, I participate in these microaggressions unknowingly because it's just been passed down and passed down and passed down, that it's almost subconsciously in you. And I now consciously make the effort not to.
Right. If only more folks could be like you, though, Jen. I mean, because there's a
Oh, I
lot
know,
of,
because I'm the shit. But come on,
you know,
I'm fucking amazing. You know this.
I don't think the world could handle any more Jen.
Oh
though,
my
to be
God, if
really
everyone
honest.
in the world was like me, this fucking world would be amazing. But come on. If there were more people like me, we'd be good. But whatever. You know.
I just got a little scared. So, as we wrap things up, I guess what I'd like to know is how can people find more about your organization?
Sure. At our website, blacknonbelievers.org. It reroutes to our website. Well, it is blacknonbelievers.org. If you type that in, you'll find us on the web. You can also find us on Twitter at B Nonbelievers. The B and the N are capitalized. You can find us on Meetup. We host in-person events. That's part of what we do. As a main part of what we do is meet folks in person. And also, we're on Facebook. We have a public Facebook page. You can find me. I have a Facebook page as well at Mandisa Thomas. So
She loves
anyone
accepting
who
people.
wants to-
She loves hearing
Yeah,
everybody's
I
story.
know.
Loves it.
Yes, I do.
Loves
I
it.
talk with some of everybody.
That's it.
That's
And
wonderful, though.
yeah, and Jen will tell you that, I'm very responsive. I try to
Oh yeah.
respond as soon as I can,
She's
and
better than I am, and my phone's in my fucking hand all day. And I'm like, why do you always get back to me so fast? It could be like 2:30 in the morning. Here she is. Girl, you okay? You doing all right?
I know, yes, but I really, really, it really does help me, and it was liberating for me, to find other atheists and to find that support system. So
And then not be the
don't
only
like it.
black atheist in a group of white people and being gawked at like being
Right.
right.
The
Right.
token black atheist.
Yeah. And it's so funny because I can walk into any room and be comfortable with anyone.
Right.
However, it can still be intimidating, and I can see how it can
Mhm.
be for
Mhm.
someone who isn't as outgoing as me,
And
who hasn't
confident.
learned how to come
Right.
and who, so I know what that's like.
And
So I mean,
when
or
you get
I
an atheist group together, they tend to be very tight knit to
yeah,
begin with. And I
yeah.
remember when I first walked into mine, I was like deer in headlights. So I
Mm-hmm.
was like, holy shit, everyone seems to be so tight knit.
Right. And
And then
everyone's
when
so
you're the one black
heady
person,
and
right? And with the group
yeah,
comes drama and bullshit.
yeah.
But when you're the one black person walking into this tight knit group of white people,
Oh,
Mm-hmm.
fuck, that's I don't give a shit how confident you are. That's intimidating shit.
Yeah, it can be a very, very isolating experience.
Exactly.
And so, it's like, well, you want to be around folks who get it and folks
Right.
who relate. And there are many types of atheists. Like I said, I'm a hip hop baby. I'm very much into. I incorporate a lot of relatable material
Right.
into my presentations because not everything is going to come out of a 1,000-page book
No.
that someone has read. Now, granted, education and that is important. The literary aspect, that is important, but that is not the only way we learn.
No.
That
We
is
learn
not the
culturally,
only
too.
way. Yeah, we do. So I'm a big, huge music fan. I have taken a lot of lessons from a lot of the music that I
We
listen
have
to.
had a lot of
And
talks
so,
about that. We've had a
yeah.
lot of talks about that.
And in relating to people, that is where the atheist community has dropped the ball, is that you don't want to talk at people. You don't want to talk at people. You want to talk to people.
Because that's what
And
the
you-
church does. They talk at people
Right.
out of a fucking book.
Right. And we were and in starting this organization and starting Black Nonbelievers, we were like, we're not gonna wait for you to understand what we go through. We
just
know
gonna
what it
do
is we
it.
go through. We know how to handle it. Yes, so we will do it. And
We respect our kind of atheist leaders, our sayings and our hitches, and
Mhm.
we do respect them, but the atheist community really is becoming this overly scholarly thing where we're heavily relying on these kind of atheist gods, quote unquote.
Yeah.
And I've said this a lot, like if you reach out more culturally than academically, you're going to turn more fucking heads.
Right. And it doesn't mean that you aren't smart just because you don't
But
use
sometimes
a
that's just
bunch
not
of big,
people's
but yeah,
thing. And when
right.
you come at
It's
them
just
so academically, it intimidates the shit out of people.
right.
They're
And
like, oh
also it
shit, what if
doesn't
I'm not
mean
smart enough?
right. And it actually doesn't mean you're smarter. It's
Right.
so funny
Right.
because people who have degrees don't necessarily have common sense.
Mhm.
And so,
And you know how many times I've heard, and I like science, but fuck, I hate math, so I'm not good at either one of them. But they're like, "Oh, you're an atheist, so you must be all about science." And I'm like, "It's
no,
cool, but no."
yeah, no, we don't all.
No, I'm all
Yeah,
about music. I'm all about
right.
art. Like, no,
Yeah.
just because I'm an atheist doesn't mean that I sit and watch the cosmos every fucking weekend
Right.
doing absolutely nothing else. It's
Right. If we
no.
appreciate the scientific method, we
Yes.
certainly do.
We appreciate the evidence.
Right. But
we
it doesn't. That
we don't
doesn't
sit here
become my
with
whole
little
life.
chemistry labs in our basements all fucking weekend, and that's where we cook the babies to eat them. No,
Exactly.
we don't. We don't
Yes.
Well, how else do you cook babies?
barbecue grill, microwave. You know
Yep.
my lazy fucking ass. I
Ooh.
microwave those little
Ooh,
bitches.
baby back ribs.
You know how lazy I am. Everything is microwaved in my house. You know that.
Yeah, but then they get soggy.
No, not if you coat them with breading and flash fry them first.
Oh.
That's
Yeah, that doesn't sound lazy, Jen.
nah. Not at
Sounds
all.
like you're trying too hard to be lazy.
No, I like crispy shit. You know me and my fried shit. I can't turn that shit down.
So on that note, why don't we wrap it up here? Mandisa, thank you so much for sitting down with us. This was very eye-opening.
For so long.
Yes, it was. Thank you
I-
so much for having me on.
I've been dying to
And-
talk to you. Jen has said nothing but wonderful things, and you live up to it.
Mandisa will be a keynote speaker at the Nashville Nuns Convention this year. I will also be doing the podcast panel again this year, which will be March 17th at I can't remember the high school's name, but we're gonna give you a fucking link, so don't worry about that shit.
Yeah,
I can't remember what the school's name is.
I'm looking for. Yeah, I am too.
Anytime I get to see you, I look forward to it. Anytime
yes,
like,
I'm a hugger too. I love.
She gives the greatest hugs in the world, and she's like, Mandisa's like super tall compared to me. I mean, I'm 4'10". Everybody's super tall compared to me, but she's like
Thank you
really
for clarifying.
and she just like wraps completely around me and like bends perfectly, so she like just encompasses everything, and I'm like, oh my god, you give the best hugs I've ever had in the whole world. I love them. Like she will literally cure anybody's anger or hurt with just one of her hugs. Like you can't help but just feel good after one of them.
Aww.
Why do you think I hunt you down for them?
I need to carry you around in my pocket.
No, that's why. Like I hunt her down all day, and I'm like, I need another hug. I can't fucking stand these people. It's just stressing me out. I need another hug. I can't drink alcohol yet. Hug me.
So that wraps it up. Again, Mandisa, thank you so much for coming. Jen, it's been fun.
Yeah, I'm just gonna text you later, and you're just gonna hear more about my depressive ass shit.
No, that's okay. That's okay. And we will be providing links to the Black Nonbelievers and white people. If you
don't be fucking white people.
If you want to get involved, shut the fuck up and listen.
Actually, the words that came out of my mouth, I was bullshitting with my girlfriends, and I called them Wonder Bread ass white bitches. And y'all know who the fuck you are. Wonder Bread, and that I'm not talking about no Great Value dollar store white bread. Fuck that, because you kind of ghetto and crusty, and we good with that. Wonder Bread white bitches, don't be one of them.
Yeah,
stop it, or go live in Florida where that shit is accepted.
Good night, everybody.
Good night. Thank you.
The Not Another Atheist podcast experience is run by Jenn and Keith. If you wish to contact the hosts, please write to nehehp@gmail.com. They can be found at facebook.com/NotAnotherAtheistPodcast or search Not Another Atheist Podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, and Google Play to subscribe and leave reviews.
I'm picking up my panties and I'm going home, okay?